Hi Math, I'm Andy. Let's take a look at how to find the slope of a line when given an equation. Now, linear equations will generally come in two different forms. One of the most common forms we call slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. Now we call this the slope-intercept form. Intercept form. Now this is called the slope-intercept form because the m and the b represent the slope and the y-intercept of the equation. And so it's like right there in your face given. So if you're given an equation that looks like this, y equals 3x plus 6, one thing to notice, the y is by itself on one side of the equation. That's really what's going to happen. The coefficient is 1, y is hanging out by itself, there's a coefficient next to the x, and then there's a constant that's being added or subtracted. The slope is really easy to identify because it's the number being multiplied by the x. So we can say that the slope is 3, or we also can see it as 3 over 1. Because we know it's a rise over run. So what this slope would represent is that each point we're going to go up 3 and we would move to the right 1. That would kind of be the movement for this slope. Now, it gets a little trickier when your equations are not written in slope-intercept form. Another form that comes with linear equations, we call it a standard form. Now, standard form looks like this. We use a capital A times x plus b times y equals c. Now, standard form, it has some great purposes. It helps us easily identify intercepts because we can plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. We can solve for the other. But finding the slope kind of becomes a little trickier. We need to do some manipulation. We need to actually get that y by itself. So let's say that we're given the equation 2x plus 2y is equal to 6. And you're asked to find the slope of this equation. Well, what our goal is going to be first is to get this y value by itself. So we need to do some inverse operations. Because the 2x is positive and I want to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract 2x. But we know that the law of equality states whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So I like to draw a line down my equal sign just to remind me that if I did something on one side, I have to do on the other. Like I literally make it two sides. So I have to subtract 2x's on both sides. 2x take away 2x is 0. So all that I'm left with on the left side of my equation is a 2y. The equal sign is still there. And now I have this 6 take away 2x. Now, because 6 is a constant and minus 2x is a variable, they are not like terms, and so they can't be subtracted. I'm not going to get 4, even though I know 6 minus 2 is 4. They aren't like terms, and so I just leave them as it is. Now, I could write it as 6 minus 2x because that's really what I see from top to bottom. But I'm thinking in terms of slope-intercept form, and just to kind of keep it consistent, that x value comes first. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write this with the x value first and the constant value second. Now that x value is a negative 2x, and so I'm going to put negative 2x. And the 6 is a positive 6, so I'm going to write plus 6. So by subtracting 2x on both sides, I'm getting that y value isolated. But I don't want two y's, I want one y. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide this side by 2 to get my 1y. Now again, that law of equality asks that we also divide this side by 2. Now division, whenever you do division, you want to make sure that every term gets that division piece. So when I divide by 2 here, every term in the entire equation is going to get divided by 2. So that means this negative 2x is divided by 2 and the 6 is divided by 2. The 2's cancel out, so I just get a y. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. The x is still there, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now I've rewritten my standard form in slope-intercept form, and I can now identify the slope. The slope is the number that is being multiplied by your x value. And so here's my x. I have a negative 1 is the coefficient, and so I know that the slope of this equation is negative 1. Another way to think about this is negative 1 over 1, because we oftentimes like to think of slope as a fraction. So I would go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1 from point to draw this line.